It's crazy that Piers Morgan Uncensored has become one of the best shows on television for news. Let's jump into it and I'll talk to you more about it.
Were you surprised by the reaction to what went down with Jordan Peterson?
Actually, no. I was actually expecting this to happen, as I knew before this, as I watched the Alex O'Connor debate against Jordan Peterson, that he was very, very not likely to, like being associated with Christianity. So I knew actually going into this that I was going to ask him a question specifically about whether or not he believes this to be the case, and that he would likely be not very upfront with his answer. So I actually kind of expected there to be a response like this. Now, I didn't expect it to go as viral as it did, as there are literally tens of millions of views on clips associated with mine and Danny's against Jordan Peterson all over social media. So it's actually really cool to see that, everyone across the board, whether it be Christians, atheists, Muslims, right, et cetera, actually see that like he's really not wanting to answer the question there because he doesn't want to be associated with Christianity for some reason.
It's just that he himself is not a Christian. So Jubilee made Jordan Peterson come and told him that he was debating religion versus atheists and God, and told the atheists that he was debating on the side of Christianity. So this video was a complete mess with confusion everywhere as to what was being debated. Alex O'Connor, a very famous atheist reporter as well. But that's really funny to me because, again, Jordan just isn't a Christian by his identity. He is himself a man of some kind of faith, sort of believes there is a God, but that's very funny to me that he says, oh, well, Jordan just acts like he's not Christian. Yeah, he's just not, man.
And Danny, I mean, you were the smart ass in the room, according to Jordan. What's been your reaction to the fallout?
I'm generally happy that that people can see the frustration that we have with Peterson. I would say that atheists are not the only ones that are frustrated. Christians are, right? Here we have Peterson saying things like, yeah, I think Jesus might have resurrected, but I don't know what that means. Yeah, I might be a Christian in some sense. I'm a one-of-a-kind Christian. It's all wishy-washy. We're all frustrated, and I think that the video is the culmination of that frustration.
Okay, well, the good news, like I told you, is we found two far from shy Christians to take you on in this arena. Andrew Wilson, let me start with you. What was your reaction to these two and their showdown with Jordan Peterson?
I mean, I kind of have to agree with Danny a little bit. It's like, like people have been wanting this guy to take the position on whether he's a Christian or not a Christian forever, on the right, the left, center, basically across the board. Now, I'll always be in some ways grateful to Jordan Peterson. He was one of the first who kind of started the trend of standing up to the pronouns people, which was pretty epic to watch.
That's fair. It was
but, ultimately,
pretty big in 2016.
He's kind of a shell of his former self. He didn't look great going through that debate. He looked kind of run down. I think that him being on with the Daily Wire probably hasn't been great for him. He's not he doesn't have the kind of edge that he used to have. But ultimately, I mean, I was actually kind of glad to see it. It's about time we know, are you or aren't you? Get off the shit or get off the pot, essentially, right? Are you a Christian or aren't you a Christian?
But Jordan Peterson, by the way, has said stuff like this. Just as myself, someone who's watched some of his stuff, I'm not an everyday watcher of his, but he's been very adamant about this. So it's kind of funny to me that these people, both sides, are obfuscating things. I think Andrew Wilson is a very smart debater, but it's pretty crazy that he doesn't even know that. Although I will agree that, unfortunately, it seems Jordan Peterson is getting run down, but what happened? I mean, how do you not when you've got the entire world against you for so long? People are taking his job. They were trying to take his teaching license because he's against compelled speech, right? I don't care if you're trans, whatever. It's about the compelling my speech, also keeping it away from children, but that was really what got him big back like 2016 and 17 when in Canada they were like, well, you have to call someone by whatever pronoun they want, and if you don't, you go to jail. Even if you accidentally call them the wrong pronoun, jail.
That's a fair question.
And Jay, I mean, ultimately, these two young men on the panel today, they're sworn atheists. You obviously are not. So if you were actually conducting a debate about their atheism against your Christianity, how would you take them on, given what happened to Jordan?
Well, it depends on what you mean, Piers. Depends on what you mean.
How would I take them on? Well, I think there's a lot of different ways that you could critique an atheist position. Most of the time, I argue from the three branches of philosophy: epistemology, metaphysics, and ethics. Those are just the three branches of any worldview, and everybody has a worldview, whether they know it consciously or not. So I would critique the foundations of the atheist materialist worldview to see if it's rational, if it's coherent, if it can provide a justification for knowledge or ethical oughts. So I think that would have been a much better route. In fact, Peterson used to kind of take that approach back when he debated Sam Harris. He would call out the is-ought problem with Sam Harris. When he debated Matt Dillahunty, he would call out the exact same types of
those are both famous
preconditions for a worldview issue that I used to do, or I usually do. So I think that'd be a better route than just sort of having this ambiguous, Jungian position of non-committal, whatever it is.
But again, Jubilee tricked him into this interview thinking he was discussing religion with these people. They thought it was Christianity. So there was no real way to meet in the middle because they kept clashing. The Christian people were like, or the atheists were like, well, you believe in this? And Jordan's like, not really. And it was because Jubilee set him up to fail. So that's kind of what I think position-wise, that it seems like he was set to fail. But also it is kind of ridiculous when these people are like, well, if the atheists, they can't have morals because if you don't have God, you can't have morals, which scares me so much that if you think that you aren't, like, if you think there's not a guy in the sky watching you, then you shouldn't be a moral good person. Reassess things. That's scary to think.
Yeah, I mean, I would say to you, Parker and Danny, that I've interviewed Jordan Peterson a lot, maybe 5-6 times on Uncensored. Quite long interviews, often quite emotional. He's an emotional guy. I would disagree with Andrew about him losing his edge. I think he's still got the edge. I also think that, putting aside the whole debate about Christianity and whether he is or not, he's always been oddly ambiguous about it, to someone who's so unambiguous about everything else. But
he really hasn't. I'm sorry, like with the debates with Dillahunty and stuff, I've watched a lot of his debates against atheists because I actually find it fascinating that Peterson takes this route that is not just the Christian talking points again and again through everything. And that's no disrespect to Christians or the talking points, but there's only so many arguments to be had from two different positions, atheist versus Christian. So I always found it very fascinating for Peterson to delve in not necessarily a religious way, but also a way that was questioning atheism. Because my thing is, I also question atheism. I don't believe that atheism makes sense to be like, well, I'm definitively sure there is no God or there is nothing beyond what I see right here. Although, again, I don't necessarily believe that a book written 2,000 years ago is the exact word, the exact written word, and I find it weird that there was so much cut out of the Bible. Like, there's so many books of the Bible that were canonically in the first iteration, and then have slowly made their way out due to, most people say, convenience, because, they're like, well, we just didn't need that, or God didn't want us to have those anymore. But, again, who's making that call on behalf of God?
But that's his right. He's entitled to do that. As a force for good, though, for young men, I do think that in comparison, for example, to Andrew Tate, that Jordan Peterson has been a far better influence over the minds of young men of your kind of age than someone like Andrew Tate would ever be. Would you agree with that?
I actually would agree with that, although the bar is literally in hell.
Right. I mean, you must see some positives in the general messaging that Jordan gives for young men about
of course,
wanting to improve their lives, wanting to empower themselves.
Clean your room. Look, Jordan Peterson's clean your room philosophy was huge for me in the sense that I never had like a dirty, necessarily gross room. My parents were very good about being like teaching me to clean it growing up, but it taught me, like, when I moved out on my own, had my own house, it was like the clean your room method of like, get your house in order, get things where you know where they are. I'm kind of forgetful. If I like put a thing down, like my wallet, I'm like, oh, where in the house did I put it? I know it's in here, but it's maybe in a pocket, it's maybe on this or that. So you have designated places for things, and that then makes your life easier, and your mental, you're cleaning out your mind, and there's less clutter in your mind if there's less clutter in your life. Just a lot of those philosophies that Jordan taught were hugely influential to me, and I think that he deserves a lot of respect for what he's done.
Opening up and so on. Do you accept that about him?
I think it's good to open up, and I think it's good for like men to like want to improve their lives, but we also need to be very specific on like what is improving towards their lives. And I honestly don't think that like Jordan Peterson
All right, already invalidated with the Bernie stuff in the background. This guy's a dumb socialism, communist idiot.
Like, within
I'm
all respects,
sorry.
you would be upholding that.
Look, Bernie seems nice, but he is a freaking idiot.
But sure, I can say he's better than someone like Andrew Tate. Like, I think that's, you know, pretty obvious.
Yeah.
Danny, what's your view
I'll give him that.
of Andrew Tate and Jordan Peterson when it comes to their influence on young men? Because it is huge.
Yeah,
With both of them, I can tell you, when I walk around, you know, most people under 25 who are male come up and they ask me either about Andrew Tate or Jordan Peterson.
Yeah, I feel like the question is like asking a Republican, is Joe Biden better than like Mussolini, right? I mean, it's such a vast difference. I would say that it seems like that Jordan Peterson has benefited people, mostly in the psychology realm, like, you know, the whole 12 rules
But was Biden better than Mussolini?
for life and stuff, which a lot of those rules seems to be rules that my grandma could tell me. But granted, the point is that, yeah, he's probably helped people. I have no problem saying that.
Right, but you have a grandma. Like, I also am very lucky. I was adopted by a loving family. I've got great parents, great grandparents, but at the same time, the idea of like, well, you should have just learned those from your grandparents. That's the thing. Jordan is speaking to disaffected youth, men who maybe don't have dads or didn't have a proper family structure. And even still, I, with someone who had a great family structure, taught a lot of these lessons. I needed to learn these lessons from an outside source so that I could appreciate them more, because if your parents are just telling you, then you don't necessarily listen as much as if it were from someone who's a respected psychologist, honestly. All right, my friends, that's where I'm going to wrap this video up. Please don't forget to subscribe, like, do all the things. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.